Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really diving into something, well, pretty profound.
Hmm.
It's this idea of using journaling, just the simple act of journaling, as a tool for spiritual growth,
Hmm.
and maybe even moving towards something like self-transcendence.
Yeah, understanding something bigger than just our day-to-day hustle.
Exactly. We got some really fascinating material from you, our listeners, exploring this, how we can connect with something deeper, inside ourselves and maybe beyond ourselves too.
Right. And when we say spiritual growth here, it's not necessarily about formal religion, though it can be. It's more about that inner shift, isn't it?
A shift in perspective.
Yeah, moving away from being purely focused on the self, the ego, towards maybe caring more for others or finding a bigger purpose, a sense of connection.
And self-transcendence then is that feeling of going beyond your own personal limits.
That's a good way to put it. Moving beyond the ego's boundaries, finding deeper meaning in life, maybe experiencing moments of unity or connection with something larger.
Okay. And what's really caught my eye in the materials is how a specific tool, chosen this AI audio journaling app, can actually, maybe surprisingly, help with this journey.
Mm-hmm.
You shared some thoughts on how just speaking your reflections, instead of staring at a blank page, can be a big help, especially if you're busy or just find writing difficult.
That's a huge point. The accessibility. Audio journaling with Chosn just lowers that barrier. You just talk.
Right.
And the practice itself, journaling, has this incredibly rich history, as the materials you sent highlighted. It pops up everywhere.
Different traditions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Christian contemplative practices, Buddhist mindfulness, Sufi
Yeah.
self-reflection, they all recognized in their own ways that recording and reflecting on your inner world is powerful. It's a tool for self-discovery, for spiritual exploration.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. You mentioned earlier this link between getting absorbed in something and the sense of self kind of fading.
Yeah, flow states.
Right, flow states. How does journaling, specifically audio journaling with Chosn, potentially lead to that feeling, that self-transcendence idea?
Well, think about flow. Those times you're so into an activity. It could be music, sports, writing, anything that the world just disappears.
Yeah, you lose track of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Research suggests that in those moments, our typical feeling of being a separate, isolated self can, well, recede temporarily. You feel more connected to the activity, to the moment itself.
Okay.
So the interesting connection here is that when you get really engaged in reflecting, in speaking your thoughts and feelings into Chosn, you can potentially enter a similar state.
Just through talking and reflecting?
It seems so. That focused introspection can quiet down that constant, often critical inner chatter. And that quiet space might allow for glimpses of that interconnectedness, that feeling of being part of something larger.
Interesting. So the act of focusing deeply on your inner world can paradoxically help you transcend it a little.
Potentially, yes. The journaling itself, especially the focused vocalization in Chosn, can become the activity that induces that flow-like state. So the key insight maybe is that journaling helps you tap into these states where the self fades a bit.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. When you're really wrestling with articulating something complex, you're not thinking about yourself in the same way.
Okay, now your notes also brought up meaning making. How does journaling fit there?
Ah, yes. This ties in really strongly with Viktor Frankl's work, logotherapy. The core idea is that we humans have this fundamental drive to find meaning in our lives, especially when we face suffering or challenges.
And journaling helps with that search.
Definitely. The materials highlighted this well. Journaling, and I think particularly the private, reflective space you get with audio journaling and Chosn, gives you a dedicated container to process those hard times.
Work through them.
Exactly. To explore your reactions, your feelings, and crucially, to actively construct meaning from what happened. It's not passive.
So you're not just recording, you're interpreting. Precisely. And that process of finding meaning, of understanding how experiences fit into the bigger story of your life, that's a huge step towards self-transcendence. You're moving beyond just reacting to events.
So a powerful takeaway here is journaling isn't just documenting, it's interpreting and finding significance. That fuels the journey beyond just the ego.
Exactly right. It becomes an active process of meaning-making.
Okay. The Center for Journal Therapy, which you also mentioned drawing from, pointed to some, well, pretty tangible benefits for spiritual well-being, too.
Yes, their insights were very practical. They talk about journaling leading to greater clarity, just understanding yourself better.
Makes sense.
And deeper self-understanding, obviously, but also things like reducing tension and stress. They've seen it be really helpful for people working through grief or coping with illness or even just trying to figure out their life goals and values.
It's amazing that something as simple as talking into an app like Chosn regularly could have those kinds of effects.
It seems simple, but the act of externalizing and reflecting is quite profound.
It really sounds like a practical, accessible way to nurture that inner life. Now, you also mentioned a concept, theoria. That was new to me.
Ah, yes. It's a fascinating term from Greek philosophy, and it also appears in Christian mysticism. It basically refers to contemplation, but not just intellectual thought. It's about gaining direct experiential knowledge of, well, the divine or ultimate reality.
An experience, not just an idea.
Exactly. And if you think about the ease of audio journaling with Chosn, you can see how setting aside regular time to just speak your reflections, your hopes, your struggles, it could become a kind of modern contemplative practice.
Like a tech-assisted contemplation.
Sort of, yeah. It's dedicated time for inner listening, for reflection that might open you up to deeper insights, maybe even that direct experience we're talking about, rather than just thinking about it.
So the powerful takeaway is that even just audio journaling could be a form of this deep contemplation on modern theoria.
Wow. It's a possibility, certainly. The intention behind it matters, of course.
Right. So just voicing thoughts in Chos could be contemplation. What about explicitly spiritual paths like Christianity? How does journaling fit in there, based on your research?
Well, the materials you shared highlighted some really beautiful Christian perspectives on this. Journaling is often seen as a tool for intentional dialogue with God.
Like prayer, but recorded.
In a way, yes. Using prompts to specifically ask for guidance or to express gratitude or simply to build trust. Some traditions encourage writing down moments you feel were divinely inspired or just documenting your spiritual journey.
Why document it?
As encouragement, both for yourself later on and maybe even for others. It creates a record of that relationship, that conversation.
Almost like capturing an ongoing dialogue in your own voice with Chos.
Exactly. And related to that is the idea of spiritual discernment.
Discernment. Like figuring things out.
Yeah, but in a spiritual context. As your notes pointed out, it's about paying close attention to your inner movements, your thoughts, feelings, desires, resistances, and trying to align them with spiritual truths or divine will.
And journaling helps how?
The act of journaling, of honestly examining those inner movements by speaking them into Chosn, can be incredibly helpful. It's like holding up a mirror. You see things more clearly when you articulate them.
You get perspective by externalizing it.
Precisely. It helps you sift through things and see what feels true, what feels aligned.
That makes sense.
Mm.
Okay, what about other traditions? You mentioned Sufism and Buddhism earlier.
Yes, and your research touched on those too. In Sufism, there's a strong emphasis on self-reflection, looking inward as the path to knowing God, or gaining gnosis, as they call it.
Inner knowledge.
Right. And overcoming the ego's trips that block self-awareness. Journaling, as a practice of dedicated self-inquiry, fits perfectly with that.
And Buddhism.
In Buddhist traditions, journaling can be a way to boost mindfulness, sati. Reflecting on your day, your thoughts, your reactions helps cultivate that moment-to-moment awareness. It increases your sensitivity to your own mind.
Leading to insight.
Ultimately, yes. Greater spiritual awareness and insight. So you see this common thread, right? Across these diverse paths, Christian, Sufi, Buddhist, there's this value placed on introspection. And audio journaling with Chosn offers a really modern, accessible way to do that.
It's fascinating how that core practice echoes across traditions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make this really practical now. You mentioned some examples, like that tiny Buddha story about Bali.
Ah, yes, the contentment anecdote. That's a great illustration from your materials. Seeing people content without constant striving, just being in the flow, that speaks directly to this idea of surrender, letting go.
Which journaling can help with. How does just talking into Chosn help you surrender?
Well, think about the practical tips from Tiny Boo that you included. Things like noticing where you're rigidly attached to outcomes, learning to trust the process, even when it's uncertain, tuning into your intuition, being open to support. By making a habit of using Chosn, you create that regular space to check in. Where am I clinging too tightly? Where am I resisting what is? Just verbalizing those patterns, saying them out loud, brings them into the light.
So you can consciously choose to release them.
Exactly. It's like a regular audit of your inner resistance patterns. The first step is seeing them clearly.
Right, self-awareness first. Your notes also had some prompts from Writing Through Life about surrender. Those sounded useful.
Yes, they were very insightful, exploring the difference between letting go and just giving up. They're not the same thing.
Good point.
Or brainstorming your reactions to phrases like, let go and let God, or thinking about responsibilities you could release, or just free writing or free speaking, in this case, on what surrender even means to you.
And you can use those prompts with Chosn.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. You take a written prompt, but you explore it through audio. Speak your gut reactions, your associations, your feelings. It can feel much more immediate and natural for some people than writing.
Using your voice to navigate those tricky inner places. You also mentioned automatic writing. How does that connect to using Chosn spiritually?
Right, automatic writing, or maybe we could call it automatic speaking here. The idea is just letting thoughts flow out unfiltered as you record in Chosn. Don't censor, don't edit in your head, just let it stream.
What's the goal of that?
It can be a way to bypass the conscious mind, the inner critic, and access deeper layers of your subconscious, maybe tap into some inner wisdom you didn't know was there.
Interesting. Is that different from the Christian idea of dialogue with God?
It can be. Some contemplative traditions emphasize a more focused, intentional dialogue. But the great thing about a flexible tool like Chosn is you can experiment. Try the free-flowing stream of consciousness and try the more directed, question-based reflections. See what resonates.
So you can explore different ways of accessing that deeper part of yourself. Now, making this stick, routine seems key.
Oh, absolutely. That article by Ryan Lance you shared really emphasized that. Like any habit, consistency helps, especially for something like deep reflection.
So how do you build that routine with Chosn?
Well, maybe creating a little ritual beforehand. Before you hit record on Chosn, perhaps take a few deep breaths. Find a quiet spot if you can, just something simple to signal to your brain. Okay, it's reflection time now. It primes you for a more focused session.
Setting the stage.
Yeah.
And you also noted something about journaling being a digging process, not just venting.
Yes, that insight from the journaling community felt really important. It's not just about getting frustrations off your chest, although that can be part of it. The real gold often lies in going back.
Listening to your old entries.
Exactly. Regularly listening back to your past Chosn entries. Over time, you start to see patterns emerge, recurring thoughts, emotional triggers, maybe shifts in your perspective or spiritual understanding.
So you track your own evolution.
You do. It helps you understand your journey, see how far you've come, or identify areas where you're still stuck. It turns the journal from just a daily log into, well, a dynamic tool for self-discovery. It's like listening to the narrative arc of your inner life.
And the audio format of Chosn seems especially good for that, right? Because of the emotion.
Precisely. That's what the ultimate guide for keeping an audio journal and Takuya Kitazawa's experience pointed towards. Your voice carries so much information beyond the words, your tone, your pace, your hesitations.
You hear the feeling behind the words.
You really do. Listening back, you might catch nuances in your mood or emotional state that you wouldn't get from just reading text. It adds a whole other layer for self-reflection. And, as Kitazawa mentioned, if you live alone, just the act of verbalizing thoughts into Chosn can be really valuable, getting them out.
A way to connect with yourself out loud? Okay, this is all fascinating. Let's nail down some concrete steps. If someone listening wants to use Chosn specifically for spiritual growth, for this self-transcendence journey, where should they begin?
Okay, step one, I'd say, is start with intention. Simple but crucial. Before you open the app, just take a breath. Focus your mind. What's your intention for this session? Is it general spiritual growth? Exploring a specific question? Connection? Gratitude?
Setting that inner compass first. Got it.
Then use guiding prompts. Don't feel you have to reinvent the wheel. Adapt some of the prompts we've talked about, from writing through life on surrender or Christian journaling ideas or just basic reflection questions.
Like, what am I grateful for? Or when do I feel most connected?
Exactly. Or what am I holding on to? How might God or my higher self see this situation? Ask the question out loud into Chosn and then just answer it.
Making it an active dialogue. Okay.
Third, try stream of consciousness audio journaling. Just hit record and talk.
Yeah.
Let whatever comes up come out without judging or editing. It can be messy, that's okay. It's about clearing the mental clutter and seeing what's underneath.
Like those morning pages people talk about, but spoken.
Kind of, yeah. Letting it pour out.
Huh.
Then, number 4, and this is vital, reflect and reevaluate. Don't just record and forget. Schedule time to listen back to your Chosn entries.
Actively listen.
Yes. Listen for themes, patterns, emotional shifts, moments of insight. Use those reflections to maybe see problems differently, gain that wider perspective.
Engaging with your past self makes sense.
5th, consciously integrate gratitude. Maybe make it a habit to end every Chosn session by just listing out loud a few things you're genuinely grateful for, big or small. It really shifts your energy.
A simple but powerful way to close the loop.
Definitely. Sixth, feel free to explore automatic writing or two-way journaling in the chosen format. Experiment. See if just letting thoughts flow works for you, or if you prefer structuring it as a dialogue with your higher self or the divine or whatever resonates.
Permission to play with the format.
Right. And finally, number 7, try to create a sacred space and time. Now, the beauty of Chosn is its flexibility. You can use it anywhere. But if possible, having a somewhat consistent time and a comfortable, quiet-ish environment can really deepen the practice.
Making it an intentional ritual, even if brief.
Exactly. It signals the importance you're giving it.
This has been incredibly insightful. It really clarifies how journaling, especially with an accessible tool like Chosn, isn't just navel-gazing, but can be a truly practical path towards, well, spiritual growth, and maybe even touching that sense of self-transcendence.
Yeah, it's about using simple tools to foster that deeper connection, moving beyond the surface level of life.
It really is about embracing that personal journey, isn't it? Discovering more about yourself and maybe your connection to something larger.
Fostering that connection.
So as you, our listeners, think about all this, here's a final thought to maybe mull over. How might regularly tuning in and reflecting on your inner world using audio journaling with Chosn actually change how you see your everyday life? How might it shift your sense of your place in the grand scheme of things?
It's a powerful question to consider.
And if you feel inspired to give this a try, to start your own audio journaling journey with Chosn, you can try it completely free. Just call the toll-free number, 888-576-5669.
That's 888-576-5669.
Or, easy to remember, 888-JRNLN-NOW. Again, that's 888-576-5669. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.